Hello, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. I want to talk today about the COVID-19 coronavirus situation, but I want to tackle it in a bit of a different way. What's really motivated me to do this, if I'm honest, is that I've watched bits and pieces of what other people are saying. And this morning, this guy was saying that because Jupiter was conjunct Pluto, this was basically leading to mass hysteria, huge death, and so on. And you know, it actually really made me quite angry, because what we need to do is understand that astrology doesn't make us do anything. It's what we do that really is important. The astrology is there, and sometimes it really does serve a higher purpose because we do become misguided. The whole point of astrology is about staying in balance, and knowledge of astrology helps us to keep retuning, because we can lose our perspective. Not everybody, but some of us can get caught up and we don't actually see the perspective. So what I want to do today is examine the solar eclipse which happened last July. Not in massive detail, but I did warn in my video then that we did need to find a balance between our desire to do and enjoy more material things coming through Capricorn, entirely understandable, but also to protect the more Cancerian energy where that eclipse occurred, which is to do with our environment, it's to do with our home, it's to do with our emotional health. So keeping the two in balance was very important on that eclipse. Then I'm going to share with you the solar return for 2020. So for the first day, January the 1st at 12 a.m, what we get for the year ahead. What are the stars saying then? And then, of course, we all know that the 12th of January came straight after the annular lunar eclipse in Cancer on the 10th of January, which is very important, providing a backdrop for 6 months. But what was the chart when Saturn and Pluto actually came together in absolute precision on the 12th? So I'm going to share that chart with you because it's quite breathtaking, the information in this. And then I want to fast forward to the 2nd of July this year to provide the solar eclipse, which provides the backdrop of energy for the last half of this year, and that provides an awful lot of encouragement. And then I'm going to share with you the solar return for the start of 2021. Now, I'll try not to get into too much detail. I'll try to keep it quite to the point. But the idea of this is to give us all, I was quite amazed when I went through all of this again, just how telling the stars are. But I think we must remember that the decisions we make are down to ourselves. And humanity as a whole is being held to account at the moment for our behaviourisms. So I hope the concept appeals to you, because I have looked at the fixed stars, particularly on the 12th of January, and there is one very important and challenging fixed star on the 12th of January. But if you'll bear with me, please, because I'm going to be going between, 5 different wheels, birth chart wheels, so I may stumble in places, but please stick with me. And I'd just like to also say, please subscribe, comment or like. I do answer all comments, and I really appreciate them because I see YouTube as being very much a community. And also, I'm just a fellow traveller just like you, so I have my own concerns about this situation, just like anyone else. But let's try and get some perspective on it. But also, just briefly, telling you that if you want to subscribe to my monthly astrology magazine, which I have to say is really packed full of some great goodies, and also get my regular email updates, or get your free daily horoscope to your inbox each day, please do subscribe underneath this video. But here goes. So we're starting off, I think, by going back to the solar eclipse of last year. So what I got with this solar eclipse is that if we look at the sun in Cancer, it's actually conjunct the North Node. Now the North Node is obviously going in the opposite direction to the other, well, it's not a planet, it's a notional point, and of course it's therefore goes through periods of retrograde and periods of stationary position. Now, when this solar eclipse occurred, it was in retrograde, but it's at really quite close to the Sun, only about 7 degrees away. So that's interesting. But what's even more interesting than that position, it's the position of Saturn when the solar eclipse occurred. So look at Saturn here in Capricorn, which of course it's in its dignity here because it governs Saturn, but it's in the first house of the body, and of course it's creeping because of the retrograde. It had started to get closer to Pluto from March 2019, and then they've both retrograde, and Saturn of course moves quicker than Pluto in its retrograde, so it's inverted more, but it's exactly opposite the North Node. The North Node is the emotional direction of us all as citizens, and that emotional direction at the moment until the 4th of May this year, when the North Node inverts into Gemini, is in Cancer, which is about our environment, it's about our emotions. So we've been pushed over the last at this precise time, about the last 16 months, to develop more of an emotional perspective. But because we've had this mighty conjunction building up between Saturn and Pluto, it really has been oppressing the North Node's energy. Interesting, yeah? But let's look at where Uranus is. Uranus, of course, first moved into Taurus in 2018 for about 5.5 months, and it was in a square with Mars for pretty well all that time in Aquarius, which caused some real mischief and tensions. They're both fixed, aren't they? Well, Mars is actually forging, there you go, another square to Uranus in this chart. But more importantly, Mercury is. So Mercury square Uranus. Mercury rules travel. But Mercury and Mars are together, conjunct, in the 8th house of regeneration, but also death, being blunt, very Plutonian, in this chart at 7, I'm just looking here, it was at 7:24 p.m, but that's GMT, so that's based on Greenwich in London. So Mercury and Mars in a really violent right angle to Uranus. Now, I can tell you that's not good for air travel, that particular aspect. The 4th house is about our environment, and you know, okay, Uranus is forging a great angle to this particular eclipse. It's only 5 degrees away from the Sun, and also the Moon coming together at this midpoint here. So that's good. So that points towards more innovation. And we're seeing more innovation. Some of it may actually turn out to be not very welcome in terms of artificial intelligence, automation. You know, that's the direction of travel that world we're in. The stars aren't making us do this stuff. We're choosing to do this stuff. But of course it will lead to innovations in medicines and so on, which can save people's lives, particularly in this crisis. But just generally speaking, what came out from this chart for me was a need to balance our home and emotional environment and our safety against the rapacious desire for material pleasure, which comes through Capricorn. And I must stress, this is not against Capricorn people at all. Every human being on the planet, whatever sun sign we are, has a choice how to lead our lives. And Capricorn energy generally can be very good because it gives us the solidity, the stability, you know, all the benefits of Saturn in terms of structures, reliability, application, determination, the things that do have very positive impacts on the situation, on our lives. But if we get too caught up in this desire for material pleasure with not enough attention on this more homely, nurturing, caring environment, then we end up with a very soulless, dispirited sort of existence. And that's the danger if we don't find the balance. So astrology is all about finding the balance. But there were some warning signs here with Mars and Mercury coming together. Mercury is the planet of Mercury is the planet of travel, and Mars obviously is very much to do with warrior-like behaviour, and it's very proud and loud in Leo. So they're conjunct and they're squaring Uranus, which leads to sudden, ill thought out actions. And if we actually trace back what's been happening over the last 6 months, we've had North Korea have started firing test missiles again. We have had the Russian intervention in Syria, where hospitals and schools have been bombed mercilessly, and that's been awful. We've also had the Turkish state pushing in to the Kurdish space, which has not been helpful. We have a trade war going on, Mercury deals, anything to do with contracts. And some people would argue that Trump's been right to make a stand on these kind of things. And you can see he's just being very protective, and he feels that the USA has been too easygoing on these. You have to have a certain degree of respect for that. But it's also understanding that it's all part of a game, isn't it, of getting a better leveraged deal. But you can see that there has been aggressiveness around ideas that flows on from that solar eclipse. So that took up the last 6 months of last year, took us into the early parts of this year. So now let's go to the 1st of January 2020. This is incredible. Now, when I was doing my yearly forecast, and I do a big overview that you can watch, it has had quite a few views, but as well as the individual zodiac signs. One of the things that I was stressing in all of my forecasts was the relationship between the moon in Pisces and Neptune. So as we went through 12 midnights on the 1st of January, we had this big collection of energy here. We had the sun. Well, look at this stellium in Capricorn. It's astonishing. We had Mercury and Jupiter together, conjunct 2 degrees, conjunct the south node, opposite the north node. The sun was opposite the north node, kind of bringing out a bit of a flavour of that solar eclipse of last year. The north node in Cancer is in the 9th house of travel, international affairs, interesting. The sun is in the 4th house of home, family, emotion, environment. But also, this is the real breathtaker. Ceres, which is very much to do with nurture, conjunct Saturn. That ain't a nice mix. And I was stressing this in my videos, that if you have someone who's born with Ceres conjunct Saturn in Capricorn in their natal horoscope, their parents are not going to be very nurturing people. They're going to be very strict, very demanding, very authoritarian. In the 4th house, it could be the strict mother, if you like. So very, very tense, that is. And of course we have got the conjunction. It's only 1 degree away. Most astrologers have put a lot of emphasis on the conjunction becoming exact on the 12th. But it also fed into that annular lunar eclipse on the 10th. But you can see they're only 1 degree apart anyway. And already there were reports of the coronavirus having become established. But if we take the midpoint between the sun at 10 degrees in Capricorn and the moon at 16 degrees Pisces, it's actually at 13 degrees Aquarius. So that's person kind, Aquarius, all of us, conjunct Venus, but it's in the 4th house. Again, our environment. So all of this energy here in Capricorn is about definitely our desire for material solidity, security, to enjoy the best of everything in life. Nothing wrong with that. It's all about proportion. But we do have this very severe conjunction on Ceres, and we do have Saturn and Pluto together. But you know what really jumped out of this chart for me when I did it around about September, October last year, was this conjunction, as well as these 3 together. It was this conjunction between Neptune and the moon. So when someone's saying in this brief clip I watched earlier, and they'd had loads of views, which frustrates me, because I feel I should get more views, so that's me being more Capricorn, so they're saying that Jupiter conjunct Pluto leads to potential mass death. Jupiter influences international affairs. Pluto is the planet of regeneration. We all know that. But I just felt, no, that's not true. The misinformation, the fear is coming from this conjunction. It's exact. You know, they're only 7 minutes apart from being exact at the turn of the year. And I knew this was going to be really important because Neptune in its home zone of Pisces is beautiful around spiritual healing, around anything to do with nurturing in a kind of less tangible way, so nurturing of the mind and the emotions. But if you put the moon there, you're talking about the potential for huge distortion, draining energy, confusion, all the kind of fear that is going around now. But look at what house they're in. The 6th house. Health, physical health, purity, medicine, healing in a practical way. So we've got a contradiction in terms of the energy. So there's your coronavirus, isn't it? But the coronavirus isn't being caused by the astrology. I can absolutely guarantee you that. But we can see why we're bringing it on ourselves. So we're talking here about the potential for enlightened people to be very, very caring and to balance in their year return the emotional, spiritual and physical health in a really cute and nice way. But we have got that conjunction between Ceres, which is not great, but we've also got some other things going on as well. And this is where the hope starts to spring. So Mercury, which I've got in Capricorn as well, in the 3rd house, which I have as well, writer and so on, conjunct Jupiter. We know Jupiter's in its fall in Capricorn, so you know it's not at its best location. But these two together is very much to do with ideas. And look at who they're linking up with, very providentially, Uranus. But Uranus in this chart is in the 8th house of death, regeneration, and Uranus is about sudden shocks, no doubt about it. And yeah, okay, it's square in the part of fortune in the 10th house. That's the world at large. Absolute square, incredible. And then we've got these two, Neptune and the moon, are forging a quincunx with Juno, how we relate. Another thing with this chart is that the ascendant in Libra, look at that, exactly square the North Node. Just 1 degree out. So the North Node, our emotional direction of travel in international affairs, Libra being the ascendant being our body, square. Also square Jupiter. So that leads to overconfidence. And of course the stock markets have been booming ridiculously. And it's one of the things I find frustrating with the way that people are responding to this crisis is the way that there will be opportunists piling in, selling off stocks. These people are so loaded. And that's very, very frustrating because obviously we all benefit from equities being stable because of pensions. Whether we like blue chip companies or not, that's an absolute fact. But we have got the ascendant square Jupiter, overconfidence, bigging itself up. We've also got its square Mercury, similar kind of thing really, sort of ideas like getting really out of shape. We also, on just 3 degrees, have the ascendant square the Sun. That's misunderstandings. That's like the individuality needs to compromise about the Sun's need in the 4th house for security. In other words, we can't all be getting what we want and making out, doing all this virtue signaling and that we care about this, we care about that. Libra, you know, look at me, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But in actual fact, we're doing things which threatens our own emotional, physical security. So this chart at the turn of the year gives us loads of signals of why this crisis was developing, both financially and also with the virus itself. Now let's go through to Jan the 12th, when the two big hitters came together exact, because you're going to be flabbergasted by this, I'm sure. Because, okay, these two exactly conjunct together at 22 degrees 46 minutes, but look at where Mercury is, the planet of travel, the planet of commerce, the planet of contracts. It's conjunct them. Look where Ceres is. Absolutely conjunct. Ceres, the asteroid of healing. Absolutely conjunct. Saturn, the planet of restriction. Pluto, the planet of destruction, if you want to call it that. Ceres, Mercury. This is all to do with communications, flight, ships, huge ships, which are not natural. I'm sorry, this may offend some of my watchers, but I have had an issue about these cruise ships for some while because they knock out these particulates from their exhaust systems, which is incredible. They burn something like the petrol that I think it's something like 250,000 cars would use in a day. They're steaming. So what they do, provide this silver service experience for people, not that a lot of people are going to be booking to go on them now, but it's a very contrived environment. So this is kind of the materialism of Capricorn gone to the nth degree. Now, I'm really sorry if you've been on one of these ships and stuck, and you're just going to have a good time, and you may have saved really hard to go, and you may have really deserved that break. It's not a personal thing. It's more of a consciousness thing. It's the same with air flight. If you're flying from the States or Britain back to the subcontinent once a year to see your folks, then good for you. That's lovely that you're staying in contact with them. But if you're popping off to Europe every 5 minutes on these very cheap flights through Ryanair or whoever, the other cheaper providers as well, other brands are available, then we can keep doing that. But if we don't have a consciousness of what the impact is on the planet, then we are really getting the most from all this Capricornian energy, but we're not thinking about our responsibilities in it. And that's what really needs to change. It's about human nature that's caused this crisis in human behaviour. It's not because of people eating bats in China, even if that culturally may not be what I fancy or approve of, or you fancy or approve of. People have been doing that there for centuries, no doubt. The reason that that's caused a problem is changes to the environment. You've got an agricultural country in China at the end of the Second World War that is now the manufacturing powerhouse of the world. So the pollution is unbelievable there. And one of the fascinating things about this crisis is pictures from space show all the pollution's gone. It's the same in northern Italy. You know, this is sad, but it's true. So we keep polluting in pursuit of these material comforts and gains without any consciousness of what's happening to the planet. So you can see this conjunction, Mercury, Pluto, Saturn, Ceres. But look, what house? 6th house, physical health. It's extraordinary. Physical health. We're compromising our physical health because of our desire to have ever bigger cars. You know, even if you buy a car that's dual powered, because again, virtue signaling, if it's a huge lump of steel that only you as an individual drive, that's not good for the environment. Because if we look at the carbon footprint of producing that vehicle, it's not great. So we have to become much more conscious of the big picture. So I think it's fascinating. Yes, everyone's been rapping on about Saturn conjunct Pluto, and we know from past historical context, 1518, the Catholic Church was confronted by the Protestant Reformation. We also have the First World War started when we had another Saturn-Pluto conjunction. We know that when Pluto and Jupiter were conjunct in 2012, we had the financial crisis. But again, it was because it was all over-egged. There was all these derivatives, these packaged products. It wasn't based on proper, fair and square finances. And they have built some systems to protect people selling off and buying too much. But I think they should have just closed the stock markets this week to try to dampen down the greed that some people are showing. They're not just shortening their position out of fear, they're doing it from greed. They're trying to protect. And I used to think when I was younger that the generation of wealth was a very positive thing because that got filtered down because people opened factories. But I think there's much more evidence now that more and more people are sitting on their finance. And I have a psychic friend, a French psychic, who's a lovely chap, and he has a very exclusive audience. And I was saying, what they must ask about surely is health. And he said, no, Patrick, they want to know about money. And this is people who were really wealthy. And it did really surprise me. Perhaps I'm just green, too naive, too idealistic. But let's also have a look in this chart at a few other things. Since the 12th of January, it's not just Saturn conjunct Pluto here. Look at the midpoint between the Sun and the Moon. The Moon's in Leo, and look at where it is. 4 degrees in Scorpio. Look where Uranus is. Uranus is at the top of the chart, the world, disruption, unexpected chaos, opposite the midpoint between the Moon and the Sun in the 4th house of our home and emotions. It's extraordinary. It does go beyond that conjunction. It's definitely about Ceres. It's definitely about Mercury with travel. It's definitely about the 6th house with health. And it is definitely about Uranus saying to us, and we're not quite getting it yet, that we actually have to change how we treat the Earth, because obviously it's in the sign of Taurus, which is about the Earth. The 10th house is about our worldly interactions, opposite our home and emotions in Scorpio. Now here's another thing. If we take where the Sun is on the 12th of January, and we see where Ceres, Saturn, Pluto and Mercury are, what decan are they in Capricorn? They're in the 3rd decan, the last 10 degrees, which begins at 20 degrees in Capricorn. And what's that governed by? Mercury. Travel. Communications. And if we drill down a bit more, what dward in Indian astrology governs this conjunction between Pluto and Saturn? Scorpio. It's extraordinary. So we got this Scorpio midpoint in the 4th house of emotion being opposed by Uranus, the planet of disruption, but also innovation, which kind of dislikes being in Taurus in a way because of the fixed. Yes, I know that Uranus is the ruler of a fixed sign in Aquarius, and it's exalted in a fixed sign in Scorpio, but of course it's therefore in its full in Taurus. But you know, it's just unbelievable what we're seeing in these charts. And then we can go a bit deeper. You saw that we had the conjunction between Neptune and the Moon at the turn of the year. Well, now we've got a quincunx. So, and also it's in the 1st house, the Moon, which is the body. And also, I think the Moon in the 1st house is lovely in the sense it's very vivid, but it can also see us almost overreacting to situations. So 9th house, Neptune's in the 9th house of travel. What a surprise. So this is where we're getting all this communication going on. So what's going to happen then? So we've got, I published the new moon guide for the 24th of March, which is the Aries new moon, which is conjunct Chiron. The 1st house of Aries is our body. Chiron is the wound we can never heal if we choose, but we can embrace the wound and try to heal it. And I said in that video that innovation will be very important to this. So if we go back to that solar return, remember that conjunction between Mercury and Jupiter is knowledge in the 3rd house, information, forging a terrific link with Uranus in the planet, in the sector, the 8th house of regeneration. Can be death, but regeneration. We are going to see some innovations, believe me. Now, I've read today on a respected news website that there is the Imperial University London are working flat out, and they've already actually, whether you find this unpleasant or not, but this has been tested on some mice, and they feel that they have got a very good reaction, an extraordinary response to what they've been testing. They started that testing on the 21st of January, my birthday, interestingly. But also on Channel 4 News last night in Britain, which I have a lot of respect for, they had a secret British company, staffed mainly by Chinese people with Chinese cultural backgrounds, and this company has come up with a test that can give you a result within 10 minutes. It doesn't tell you whether you've got coronavirus, it tells you whether the antibodies that allow coronavirus to thrive are being activated or not. And this is the kind of innovation that's going to be coming through. mankind, personkind, womankind has an opportunity to regenerate. But if we don't learn from this crisis, this is just going to be the first in a series, because already the world is tottering on the brink with the amount of plastic in the oceans, the amount of global warming there is, the amount of genetically modified food, the amount of sprays of pesticides that we're using that's causing a gross amount of cancer. And unless we live a more simple life, a more humble life, and we have those more materialistic breaks in greater proportion. And my wife has got the fantastic idea, Elisa, that every single person on the planet should have a carbon passport. And those people who live very simply should get credits and can sell to those people who want to live a more material and internationalistic lifestyle. I think it's a brilliant idea. And that kind of citizenship is what's going to come through the prism of Saturn moving into Aquarius. The reason that we're getting this crisis at this time, it's going to reach a peak, I feel, in the third week of March. But then, of course, on the 22nd of March, we have Saturn move into Aquarius. But as I said in my Saturn video for Aquarius, it's going to be a rough period right through till when we get to the 17th of December. And then when Saturn moves into Aquarius, then it's joined by Jupiter. For the first time in 20 years, they're going to come together. So we have the start of a new journey, which is really exciting and really heartening. And I think then we all need to change our behaviour. Every single person, if we change our behaviour, it can make a difference. Even if we just do little things, really be careful about recycling every bit of carb, every bit of plastic we might use, every tin, every bottle, but also becoming much more aware of using a bike or walking, turning our car off if we're in an idle situation. That really frustrates me. It has done for a long time. I've actually been interested in the Friends of the Earth since, pardon me, since I was about 17 years of age, and I had a friend who I worked with who was a bit older than me. He was from London, and Adrian had a very insightful view of the world then. So you're talking about going back to the late 70s, because I'm 62 now. So this agenda has been there. The Friends of the Earth is something that's really important to me. Of course, now we've got Extinction Rebellion. They're doing a great job in raising the profile. But again, I might have lost a few more subscribers if you feel that this is all fearful talk. It's not. We can have the treats. We just need to have the proportion and take more personal responsibility. So, what about the future? Because I feel it's really important we think about the future, that we find the hope. So let's see what the solar eclipse says for this July the 2nd, because it is really quite encouraging. Now, the thing that's happening on the 5th of May this year is that we have the North Node inversing into Gemini. Now, Gemini is much more to do with chat, chat, chat. I like Gemini people. I like Gemini energy because it's bright, it's breezy, it can be entertaining. We know that we can get Gemini people who can be frivolous. There are two world leaders in my country and your country, a lot of watchers who are Geminis, and they love to chat. But Gemini energy generally for us all is a kind of bright energy. It's about information sharing. And we can see on this new moon, which happens at 0 degrees 21 in Cancer, to do with nurture, it's in the 11th house. So that's about community. That's about us all coming together collectively. It's also conjunct the North Node, just moved into Gemini. And we also have Venus, which moves into Gemini on the 4th of April. I mean, obviously, it does go into a retrograde. I just think, is it the... I'll just turn forward in the ephemeris. It goes into retrograde on the 13th of May through till the 24th of June. So there is the potential, undoubtedly, due to fake news. I mean, the whole fake news agenda really came from the 2016 eclipse, which occurred, new moon, which occurred in Gemini, but forged a grand mutable cross with Jupiter, with Neptune, and Mercury, I think, at the time. And I think that's a lot why we have had fake news becoming so prevalent. But I think generally, this is a much more healing potential, because the communication and the conversation we all need to have with each other is providing the hope that we can come together collectively. Are there some challenges in this chart? Well, let's have a little look. We do have Mars, the planet of drive and determination, in the 9th house of travel, but it's quite close to Neptune. It's passed over Neptune. I'll tell you when that's actually going to be happening, because that will probably be a point of quite profound confusion. But let's have a little look. So Mars, this is basically how I do live readings. So on the 20th of June, Mars is going to go over Neptune. Now, I don't know if it'll be in the 9th house at that time, because this chart is based on this event, this solar eclipse. And you can see also, well, I'll just better stick with this, sorry if I'm wandering off slightly. So Mars conjunct Neptune can be to do the trickster bar none, so this is distortion of reality. But that's interesting. And then we've got the ascendant on this particular solar eclipse is actually opposite Saturn. So our relationship's still limited, our physical body's still limited by Saturn's footprint, even though it's in Aquarius. And that's why I think we need to be really realistic. And of course then, on the 2nd of July, Saturn inverses back into Capricorn, and it does, in the autumn months in the northern hemisphere, come back into quite a close conjunction with Pluto. And I do think all of this is going to cause havoc on the financial markets, unless the governments and the UN come together in some kind of collective effort. The international monetary authorities come together to kind of clamp down on these mass trades, because they're just so not good for any of us. We need to take a long-term view. Now, you might not like what I'm going to say, but one of the things I really admire about German governance, whether it's in business or government, is that, say for example, Mercedes or BMW have lost money, or Volkswagen at certain times since the war, which they have. Instead of closing the factories down, as does happen in Britain, what they do is take a longer term view and put more investment in, and then they develop combine harvesters, trucks, tractors. They diversify, they get better at what they're doing. They don't just stick to cars. The sort of more British approach, and I think it can happen in the States as well, is a lack of intervention. It's just, well, you know, if these big airlines are going down because people can't fly because of coronavirus, that's tough. They have to lay off their workforce. What we need to be doing with this crisis is taking a longer term view, and I hope that that does happen. And of course, Jupiter and Pluto are going to be in a conjunction for about 5 months this year, and you can see it's very close together here, and it is in the 6th house in this chart of physical health. But remember, Pluto is about regeneration. It's not just about death. And that's why it really bugged me hearing that guy talk like that earlier, because this is the kind of scaremongering. He's saying that we really need to connect with our inner hearts. Well, it all sounds very profound and right on, but, you know, we need to also stay realistic. If people have Pluto conjunct Jupiter in Capricorn in their natal chart, I can tell you they will end up very successful on the whole. Jupiter conjunct Pluto, sextile trine, is one of the best aspects you can have for success. Okay, we know, as I've said before today and before, that Jupiter's in its fall. I think I accidentally said in its detriment in my previous new moon video for Aries, so I apologise for that. But I think this is an opportunity for us to rethink. So the retrograde is about slowing things down. Pluto retrograde is never usually very good for the economy, because obviously it does rule power. The other thing that some astrologers have been saying about Pluto and Jupiter is that it's going to bring down really big authoritarian governments. I read somebody say that it's going to bring the Russian government down, the Chinese government down. It won't. What Putin's doing is actually changing his constitution to make sure that he will be re-elected as president from 2024. The total power that comes from Saturn, Pluto and Jupiter will be still impressed upon people in Syria by those Russian jets, which is outrageous. by North Korea, and also, of course, in Russia in terms of civil rights. But their view of the situation will be very different from the Western worldview. Their view is that democracy isn't necessarily a good thing. There's lots of problems with social cohesion, which I agree with them totally about. Lots of problems with drugs, with exclusion, with people thinking that loads of people got all this money and go on all these glorious trips and everyone else has next to nothing to live on. And so there is a downside to this apparently Western open system of operation. And therefore, it could be argued that with the Chinese, they have a degree of liberalness around business, but they still have that rule of fear there. It's quite a motivating connection, that, isn't it? But we are seeing some things crumble. So we've seen Epstein, we've seen Prince Andrew, we've seen Weinstein, we've seen the Maltese government are being brought to account for the murder of the journalist there, Daphne, which was, I don't know her surname, but I have been following the story carefully, which is outrageous, and they've resisted all overtures from the European Union to analyse that death properly, but now they are. So that's bringing a shift. Some people would argue that Saturn conjunct Pluto has brought about Brexit, because they agree with Brexit, and it's causing the disintegration of Europe because they now can't agree on their policies. And, it depends on which side of the fence you look at things. I like to see myself as just being a humble citizen of the world. I don't see myself as just ruled by some nation state. I feel that I can connect to anyone in a decent way, which is providing a decent service, a decent value, and trying to help. So that's my motivating factor. But it depends how you look at things about these power structures. Some will be pushed on, that become even more totalitarian, and some will be torn down. I'll give you an example of a sector in business which is really being affected by Saturn conjunct Pluto, and that is shopping malls, because of the switch to online and the rates that they want for their leases, whether it's in the States or the UK, and the rates that retailers can afford to pay, because they have to pay all this taxation directly to government that online retailers, especially international online retailers, don't pay. And then, of course, you've got footfalls dropped because of online shopping, and then, of course, it becomes less of an experience if you've got all these closed shops. So what does the British government do? Put up business rates for retailers. Crazy. So that's a destruction of a sector that's very Capricornian, because it's built on bricks and mortar, which is very Capricornian. So I think we are going to see some real headwinds as far as the economies of the world are concerned, pretty well for all of this year. And I don't get any pleasure in saying this, but I do think that this chart does offer some hope, but we've got to keep the clarity of our thinking around Mars and Neptune. But it's all about communicating more clearly and more kindly. The 11th house is about us as a collective. Sorry if I rattled on a bit there. So where are we going to be on the 1st of January 2021? Well, the exciting thing, I've already mentioned it, is these two guys together here. Saturn conjunct Jupiter in Aquarius. So what I see as the direction of travel towards Aquarius energy, Saturn moves into Aquarius on the 22nd of March. Human, womankind gets a wake-up call about the behaviour that we've been adopting, and realising that it affects us all, humanity, Aquarius. So Saturn pressing down 1 degree. The first dward of Aquarius is double Aquarius. It's very Aquarian, very Uranian, so disruptive. Things are being ripped down. It's not pleasant at all. Don't think Saturn moving into Aquarius is going to be a panacea for all our issues. It's a wake-up call. And as I said in my Saturn video that I published about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Saturn in Aquarius in its transition, its first 4 months, and then its return to Capricorn, and then we're kind of clinging on to the old way, and then we get to this point where we have this wonderful solar eclipse on the 14th of December that's in Sagittarius, which is much more hopeful. And you can see at the turn of the year we also have Venus in Sagittarius. It is squaring Neptune in the sector of health, and we've also got the part of fortune conjunct Neptune as well in the 6th house. There's still going to be a battle going on. I still feel that what we need to do is test people quicker. We need to build the infrastructure and put the money into health systems to deal with this. And in that sense, we have to have the greatest respect for what's going on in China and in Russia, where they're building proper isolated hospitals to deal with this issue. Britain is just so ungeared up for it. The government's response has been awful. They just haven't realised we have to test people a lot, and that will create a sense of security. They also need to limit this panic buying, which is selfish, means that some people don't get any hand wash or toilet paper, or some smart Alex are sitting at home with so much that it will last them for the next 3 years. Really sad elements of human behaviour. So with Saturn in Aquarius, we're going to see the best and worst of human nature. But it is a new beginning, and we do have a wonderful opposition between the North Node and Venus in the 9th and 3rd houses. I think this creates a real sense of optimism. We do have a moon square with Uranus, the moon in the 10th house in Leo. But the moon in Leo, I'd rather have the moon in Leo at the start of the year than the moon conjunct Pisces in Neptune. I've got to be honest, because this is fire. It's also in the first ward of Leo, so it's going to be very sun orientated. So this is like a new world order, not that new world order, a new world order coming through between all of us as individuals as we begin to look at things differently. And you can see that, yeah, there's Pluto. It's actually forging a square with Mars. There's going to be some people who are going to be very angry about what's going on in the world. There's going to be big changes. This is a structural change coming through. So what Jupiter in its conjunction with Saturn is saying, we need to look at things in a more community orientated way. So I'm just as much as a neighbour of a person in the Philippines as I am a person in Japan, as I'm a person next door to me. We're all neighbours. And if we can start to think about that we're all part of this world community in a connected way, rather than just jetting off to, go to a luxurious holiday in a very poor region with no awareness of the global and environmental impact that holiday has. So I just feel there's got to be surcharges. If you want to do really luxury things, have surcharges which go into a common pot for the regeneration of renewables, more investment in medicines to deal with this crisis. But I don't think this crisis is to do with people eating bats. I think it's to do with global warming. It's to do with this agricultural country in China being hugely industrialized now, with perhaps not all the systems in place to deal with that, to do with the temperature change, the sea rising, all of this stuff we need to grapple with. So Saturn is the kind of destruction of what we've got at the moment. Jupiter is the hope, and when Pluto moves in 2023, then properly 2024 into Aquarius, we really have to start fighting to save this planet, because what all of this is about is global warming and behaviour. So what's the midpoint? The midpoint is 21 degrees in Libra. So we're not out of the woods. It forges a gorgeous link with Venus. It forges an opposition with Mars. So we've got a T-square between the midpoint, Mars and Pluto. So there's still going to be a lot of choppiness going on, but I think the hope will be coming through. And I think, what governments need to be doing, as well as getting a clamp down on the financial markets and those investors doing this selling and buying for their own selfish gains largely. I know I'm going to be very challenged by a lot of what I've said today. This is the real me that you don't usually see, a bit more sort of idealistic. But what we are going to see is more and more people are going to get the message that we have to modify. But whether it will be enough, I don't know. Have you ever, when I went through rheumatoid arthritis 2 years ago, I've had it again a bit recently down my arms, and it's been painful, but 2 years ago I couldn't hardly walk. I was on crutches for 8 weeks, couldn't get out of bed. I was so much in pain. It just is amazing how we quickly forget pain. And that's the thing we need not do with this crisis. We're going to be learning from it. We need to isolate people quickly. We need to understand it's probably going to be hanging around a while. There are some astrological predictions that say it will burn out by late May. This is based on fixed star analysis. And of course there's this book that this psychic who's now passed wrote, I think her name's Sylvia Brown, highlighting the start of a worldwide pandemic plague in 220 that would burn out very quickly. That was actually a novel, so it's important that when people are using that as a fact, it was a novel. Let's hope she's right. It doesn't make anything better for the poor people of Iran or Italy at the moment, who are really getting the full brutal force of this. And the other thing with this condition is that for some people it does seem to be relatively mild because they have got an immune system that deals with it, whereas with other people it just completely destroys their lungs, even if they're very fit and well. It doesn't matter. So there do seem to be different variants, or it interacts with people differently. So a lot of people seem to be saying, well, we all need to catch it because we need to develop the immunity. Well, how do we know how we're going to respond to it? Because it's a new form of coronavirus, because we all have coronavirus in us apparently. Obviously I'm not an expert, but COVID-19 is a hybrid. So we're all going to react to it differently. So I feel that much greater intervention by governments. Some governments have shown tremendous leadership, some have overreacted, and some have been far too sort of lackadaisical. And I think the British government have definitely been guilty of that. So we need to test people quickly. We need to understand it can happen to people, members of the government, managers of famous football teams, and Arteta at Arsenal, which is very unfortunate. I hope he gets well really soon. And obviously the fitter and stronger you are, the more you're likely to survive it. But that's not a given for everyone, as they're saying in Italy and also Iran. It's just absolutely awful. So this is a nasty situation, but it probably has been caused by the basic temperature of the world rising too much, and the way that the bats or what they're eating, that may have changed due to clearances of various environments of theirs. The wet markets themselves probably aren't a great idea in the change of the environment in China, but it's easy for us to judge when people have been eating those things for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So, but it's not really about judgment, it's more about this whole desire for travel a lot without an awareness of the impact, and also of material goods. So all the wooden cabinets we want, the luxury furniture, all the forests being ripped down to feed all of this, when actually, you know, you can upcycle, you can renovate, you can enjoy things. The most important thing in life is our loved ones. It's sitting down, having a cup of tea, having a beer, just being with people we really care about. It's not necessarily having these all highfalutin things, which means we're out of touch more and more and more with the true meaning of life, which is love. Isn't it, really? It is about caring for people that are important. And the people who seem to have such a preoccupation with material gain are the people, in my life anyway, who are completely out of touch with emotions. They don't get it. They don't get it if you're poorly or you're not very well off. It's just a mystery to them. But they're so cocooned. So this crisis is not a crisis caused by the planets. It's not a crisis caused by Chinese people. It's a crisis caused by all of us in terms of global warming, in my humble opinion. But the planets do tell us what we can modify to try and get ourselves back in balance, and they also show what we've had out of shape. Now, I mentioned fixed stars earlier, but I didn't go back to talk about it. So if we go back to January the 12th, and we see it 22 degrees, so the fixed star that was opposite this group of planets, the Sun 21, 22, 20, 23, so it was opposite all of that, was Pollux, P-O-L-L-U-X, not bollocks. Sorry, I couldn't resist that joke. Pollux. So Pollux is about potential for death, ruin, destruction, and that was opposite in the 12th house. Yeah, emotional, mental health. So that fixed star was there. But again, it's not the fixed star, it's not the planets that are causing us, it's us. So I think a lot of you guys watching this will probably, well, some of you could have quite strident views against my position, but I think a lot of you will understand where I'm coming from. It's not that we shouldn't have treats, it's just having treats that are proportionate and not just seeing these treats as being the norm. And it is interesting that Jupiter, the planet of travel, is involved in this situation. And of course, we've had Mercury going through Pisces, which it really doesn't, it's not at its best. I mean, I was reading an astrologer in the Astrological Journal who I really respect, and he was saying we need to challenge the views about detriments, because if Mercury is in Pisces, that's actually great if you're a writer or a poet, you want to work with film, and he's absolutely right, God bless him. But it is in detriment in the more traditional rules of astrology, and it has, or it is going to be going into conjunction with Neptune, as you know, week commencing, I'll tell you exactly, because I'm always working ahead, I get forgetful. So Mercury's going to be conjunct Neptune it's week commencing, yeah, it's week commencing the 30th, so they go conjunct on April the 3rd and 4th. So there's going to be some confusion then as well, because Neptune and Mercury together is not much better really than Neptune and the Moon, I think. I mean, Neptune and the Moon, as we had in that solar return at the start of the year, is absolutely beautiful for kindness and compassion, but it could be making this mist of confusion swirling around. And of course, mist is what does predicate viruses and moisture. So that's just my personal thoughts about trying to get a feel of where we're going. We will come through this coronavirus. Mankind, personkind, womankind will fight back. We're going to see a lot of innovation coming off the back of that Aries new moon and conjunct Chiron. We've got to. We also, once Mercury moves into Aries on the 11th of April, we're going to see a lot more bright stuff coming through. But the solar eclipse is much more encouraging for the 2nd of July. And we can see the genesis of this whole crisis did really start because we weren't tuning in a more balanced way to what we need as human beings in a more emotional sense. So travel, essentially, I think exportation, the global economy has driven this crisis, as I said, more than anything else. I'll be very grateful for your comments. It's going to be quite a challenge for me to open up like this and hear what you have to say, shy old me. But also, if you'd like a one-to-one with me, it'd be an absolute pleasure. Or you'd like to order your personal horoscope forecast and character analysis, we have to keep going. That's the message I feel. And it just really, really sparked my irritation this morning when this guy saying, well, Jupiter, Pluto, it's going to be mass death. Well, yes, unfortunately, some people are going to die, but, you know, we need to look at this in the whole. And I think really what we're seeing is the Scorpionic energy on the toward, the last 10 degrees being about Mercury, the midpoint being on this 12th of January chart was in Scorpio opposite Uranus. We're seeing a lot of potential for health issues, a lot of potential for disruption, a lot of potential for confusion. But we're also seeing how we will come out of it. And really and truly, the Saturn conjunct Pluto conjunction is a big structural shift, which all astrologers knew was coming. We thought possibly the stock market would take most of the hit. And obviously Capricorn energy is about more traditional powers, the old powers, total top-down powers. And we are seeing some of those industries being, you know, challenged, you know, whether it's coal production, it's just been banned for open fires in 2 years' time in the UK. So some of these things are going to be going, and it's positive they're going. And of course, we have seen some of these people have done these very serious sex crimes brought into scrutiny as well. So all that stuff's good stuff, but we are going to see some other totalitarian powers holding on to it for dear life, believe me. But we as individuals can take great heart from the transits coming our way into Aquarius and that wonderful solar eclipse of December, the more promising one of July the 2nd. And I think we just need to live as safely and as modestly until then, and try to keep a sense of perspective and look after ourselves. And I do wish you personally well wherever you're watching in the world. And thank you so much for having joined me. Goodbye.